Welcome to Stories from the Center of the Universe, the podcast about the human experience.
Mark Johnson, welcome to the Center of the Universe.
Hey, thanks for having me, Paul. I have not been able to spend much time in the center of the universe, so thanks for having me here. This is a known place.
Well, you are in Ashland, Virginia, technically, the mailing address of Ashland. Ashland is well known. I say well known. People in the Richmond area know the slogan Center of the Universe, but you and I in this conversation is also the Center of the Universe from my perspective, and so
Sure.
it kind of has two meanings to it.
That's right.
Very cool. Well, I guess we should start with how you and I connected.
Right. Brett.
How do you and Brett know each other?
So Brett, well, we moved to Virginia back in 2008, end of 2008, beginning of 2009, by the time we got totally established here. And outside of my industry and work, Brett was the first civilian that I met, first guy that I became friendly with outside of my workplace. And it was really great we connected through scouts. Both our sons were in Cub Scouts, same age. He has two sons. I have two of my youngest are sons. And we lived in the same subdivision, Brandermill. And we just connected with scouts, and it was great to have someone. And he was just a stand-up guy. It was great to have someone. We used to take the boys out together and do bike rides and do scout things and all that.
He's the kind of guy you want on your team.
Oh, absolutely. It just going forward, we kept in touch over the years, and we actually, Brett and I started a 212 business network group together.
All right, nice.
And he was the first guy I called when I had the opportunity to start. And I said, "Hey, Brett, you want to do this with me?" And he and I got together and we built a team and had the team running for a little while.
It's not running anymore?
It is not. It changed hands. The name stayed for a little while, but I think it finally dissolved out, which is kind of the course of some of those teams.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep those together.
Right.
Yeah, because people that join a 212 group, maybe they're in business for the next 20 years, maybe they're in business for the next 2 years.
That's right. Yeah. Different steps. It's a great. I use the business networking groups a lot when I'm talking and to different people and doing, mentoring and everything, because there's a great way for people to meet people and get out. And it's important. This day and age, so many people rely on social media.
Yeah.
Everything for business, and which is important, is good, but nothing takes place of the person to person.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, you and I are old enough to remember when the internet didn't exist, or at least it wasn't prolific. Social media wasn't a thing. And people, I mean, I've seen a few comedians talk about mindfulness. Like that wasn't a concept before the internet, before social media. And now I think it's more important than ever, especially post-pandemic, for people to be engaging in person, or at least one-on-one, away from their screens, kind of thing.
It is. And not only good for business, but it's healthy personally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
All right. What part of the world are you from?
So I'm originally from a place called Sutton, Massachusetts. And it's a very rural, well, it used to be a very rural town when I grew up there. And my family has been in Sutton, Massachusetts since the 1600s.
Wow.
And I'm
so related to the Plymouth Rock folks.
Well, absolutely. I'm a descendant. I am two-time descendant from Plymouth.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, we've traced it back and everything. It was really it's really unique to go back and see that heritage. I'm actually the last landowner from my family, Johnson, that I still own land in Sutton, Massachusetts.
Wow.
And it's been in my family since the 1700s.
That's crazy. For America, that seems like a really long time ago, but if you go to Europe, maybe not so much.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. I have to ask everybody from Massachusetts this question, and so I'll warn you, I don't want to offend you with this question, but are you a masshole?
I am a masshole, and I live up to it.
Really?
Yes.
You don't strike me as a masshole.
Well, it depends on your definition of masshole. I drive like a masshole.
Okay, then you're a masshole.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've gotten better since I've been here. So one of the things when we first moved here, my wife and I, and I remember the CEO who recruited me and brought me here. One of the first conversations is, "Hey, Mark, You need to take it easy. You don't need to get everything done immediately. You're from the north, and I understand everything's fast paced. Now, he understood this because he was a CEO of many hospitals at one point in his career, so he understood who he was dealing with. And so I said, "Oh yeah, no problem, everything." So we go into a grocery store, and right when we moved here, and we're going through the grocery store, we're like, "Why is everyone going so slow?" Because we're used to going to the grocery store, getting what we need, and get out. We get to the line, the checkout. I say to my wife, "Okay, hey, I'll go get the car ready." Because this is how much a rush of pace of life is in the north. I'll go get the car ready, get the kids in the car. So as soon as you get those groceries cashed out, come on out. We'll load it up and we're at it. So all of a sudden, I'm sitting here waiting for my wife to come out, and she comes out. She's not pushing the cart, and she has this frown on her face. It was at a U Crops when U Crops was
Sure.
coming,
Yeah.
and the young gentleman was pushing the cart out for her. She's like, he would not let me push my own cart, and she was upset about it.
That's Southern hospitality, right?
And he called her ma'am.
That's,
So
that's how we rolled back in the day.
up north, if you call a woman a ma'am, they can get offended.
Really?
And so
How is that affect? Because the implication is they're old.
old or madam.
Okay.
Ma'am's a short term for
Sure.
madam.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a madam is a
Yeah. Sure. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very
So-
different connotation.
That's right. So it was kind of funny. So we learned to slow down the pace a little bit.
Yeah. I think you
keep
live
it low.
longer.
You sure do. It's healthier.
Yeah. It's got to be, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Lower pulse, lower blood pressure, all that.
that's right. And
I forgot about U Crops, and they would not let you push your own cart.
and I could only picture it. You know, she was probably fighting with that young man, and
She had no idea what he was doing.
yeah, exactly.
Like-
Well, that's my cart. Leave it alone.
Why are you following me into my car? That's amazing.
But yeah, so I am a masshole for the fact that I have slowed down my driving. But it was just when you get in Massachusetts and you get on some of the roads there, it is, on the expressways or the interstates. I mean, back then it was 80 miles an hour. I have noticed that here things have picked up as far as speed goes.
Yeah.
Driving.
Well, you know why that is. My theory is a lot of people have migrated from the north to the south because it's slower, it's cheaper. People are, and I don't mean to offend anybody in the Northeast, but we're generally more polite. And so you've seen a lot of people move from New England, New York, Pennsylvania, even Maryland, Ohio, down to the Carolinas or to Virginia. And so it's more of a melting pot the last, I would say, 25, 30 years than
Right.
it's ever been.
Right. But it's funny. So in New England, you have all these side roads and the speed limit is 25, 30, 35 miles an hour. Here, the side roads, very similar, are like 45, 50, 55.
Yeah, and they'll weirdly go from 45 down to 25, then back
Right.
up to 40, and yeah.
Yeah.
I think Virginia does that to more tickets.
Yeah.
Tickets haven't been super prevalent since the pandemic, but before the pandemic, man, there were speed traps everywhere and just weird changes in speed limits, and so yeah.
Right.
And we have country roads in Virginia, and I don't know if Massachusetts is the same way or other states are. If you have a country road that doesn't have a line in the middle, there is no speed limit on that road technically. And it's narrow, and you would think it should be no higher than 25, but legally there's no speed limit.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I did not know that. Yeah.
There aren't many of those roads around, or at least they're not getting a lot of traffic, but technically that's the case.
Right.
Yeah.
I have noticed again that the pace of life has picked up, and one thing that in one of my professions, when I was director of optical and different eye care places, is that when we were looking from the fashion aspect, when we're in, you have Boston, you have Worcester, Massachusetts, it would take almost a year for the fashion trends to get from Boston to Worcester. And so, and it would take some time from New York trends to get to different places too. So when I came to Virginia, as we're studying that, how long does it take for DC fashion trends to get to Richmond? And there was a little bit of a time lapse there too, so it goes to Northern Virginia, of course, first, and that whole DC area. But then it would take about a year also to get to here,
Yeah.
to the Richmond area. And not every fashion trend would get there because Richmond has kind of its own trend too.
Richmond and DC are very different places.
But the same thing is with pace of life. It just automatically comes from those larger
Yeah.
metropolitan areas and just comes out. And it's with people moving, all that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so you've lived quite the varied life. You and I have talked a couple of times before we started recording. You've, I'll describe it as many brushes with the music world. Is that a fair way to describe it?
I've had some brushes with the music world, yes.
So tell me how that ended up being the case for you.
So a couple ways. I always loved music, as you know, growing up as a child and so forth. And actually one of the first things, I'll go back to where it started. Um, when I was younger. So this is, I don't know, sixth grade or something like that. My I started listening to a band called Twisted Sister
Sure. The
and
big
everything.
big hair era.
Big hair era and everything. Um, at that point in my life, so fifth, sixth grade, I was a little overweight. I was getting somewhat bullied in school, and the Twisted Sister songs that came out, kind of I related to. We're not gonna take it,
Yeah, sure.
and everything. So I want to rock. So as I got into that, listened to music, it just led to other things, and then I got this book. It was written by Dee Snider called Teenage Survival Guide,
The lead singer of Twisted
the
Sister.
lead singer of
Yeah.
Twisted Sister. And so I read this book, and it had everything for a teenage boy. And
And he was writing that sincerely. He wasn't writing that as the lead singer of Twisted Sister.
no,
He was trying to put good into the world
that's
of Dee
right.
Snider.
That's
Yeah.
right. And he himself, one of the things I used with this book, and I use this with my children and other people that I've mentioned it to, and is that I've never done hard drugs, cocaine, crack, heroin, or anything like that,
Right.
because of something he wrote in this book.
Wow.
And I used exactly what he did in his book when someone offered him cocaine. And when I was offered cocaine for the first time, I did the same exact thing. And what it was is that he was offered cocaine by a bunch of um, bikers or something after a concert or something like that. And he's never done cocaine or anything, supposedly. Um, so says the book.
Yeah.
That he said, "Oh, you know what? I can't do it. I got some other things going on and everything. Can you do mine?" And people that love cocaine are like, "Oh, well, hell, thank you." I did the same exact thing when it was put in front of me
Wow.
by older people in my school, whoever put it in front of me.
Yeah.
And I said, "Hey, I did the exact same thing. I'm sorry, I can't. I have to do this tomorrow and everything. I got so much going on. Tell you what, could you just take mine?" And it worked. And so I stayed away from all my life. I've been able to stay away from it.
Yeah, I imagine Dee impacted more people than just you, but it's
Yeah,
wonderful that he had that impact
right.
from that book. When year did that book come out?
Heck, it had to be 84, 85,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah, it was an interesting play from him to
Right.
like he's like tons of makeup, huge hair, and then he's putting out a very serious book trying to help teenage kids.
Yeah, and I started growing my hair out at that point in my life, and I had, believe it or not, you can't tell now, but I have curly hair, and I had this big hair and curly and long. Started growing my hair long, and you got the earrings and all
Do
that
you, do you
stuff.
have pictures?
Someone does somewhere. Actually, one of my good friends, someone I'm gonna recommend for this podcast
Okay.
at some point.
I love it.
He was able to get a picture and he put it up in. I did some work for him. He put it up in the lunchroom of his workplace. He made this nice wall. He put it up in a nice way, um, of way back when. And I had some longer hair. It wasn't at the longest point.
Do we want to use that picture with this episode?
Probably not. Probably not. There's some of my mentors out there. I would not want to see this picture.
Not for public consumption.
Right. But so it started there, and I really got into music. So started going to concerts, and my family owned a concession business that was doing outdoor events. It started as a small thing, and so they do smaller concerts and things like that, and car shows and county fairs, snowmobile shows, you name it. And it started out as a food truck, what we call roach coaches,
Mm-hmm, sure.
and pickup truck with this back on it, that doors opened up. And so we would go there when I was younger. This is before I could drive. I would just hang out there with my brother-in-law or my sister. And people would come buy stuff at us, these small car shows. And then that went into food trailers before food trailers were a thing.
Right.
And so, and then it just grew from there. It became, the business became, not only did we have our own trucks, we would actually manage all the concessions that would come in. So we'd be hired and we would come in and subcontract it out.
Yeah.
And it was a business that my sister and her husband actually ran. And as a teenager, I grew up into my 20s. Actually, I retired from that when I was 30. I worked with them doing that, and it got me all over the East Coast. And
Oh, really? Y'all traveled that much?
oh, right, yeah.
Wow.
So we were doing the food. Anytime the band Fish would do an outdoor venue, like a 3-day venue,
You were there, concession people?
we would manage the
I
concessions.
mean, they're known for prolific touring.
And
So you were on the road a lot.
so yeah, I mean, we were different things. There was a lot of different bands we got to, and at that time too, radio was still big. And so the radio stations would have these concerts, these promotional concerts, free concerts, and things like that. So we would go in and manage all the food for the radio for these stations on
Yeah.
the East Coast, and it was a lot of fun. So I got to one of the things that I loved is I'd make food for the famous artists, and so then I'd also be able to get the people backstage and meet the sound engineers and different people, and just got to know them over
Yeah.
time and became friends. And hey, when we're in the area, we'll look up, hey, come see me at this, I'm gonna be at this venue, come see me here. And so I'd go and they get me in through backstage, and I get to hang out, and so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, one thing that I don't know that I have experience with a lot of these folks, but musicians that I've been around, especially non-singers, are fairly introverted because they spend so much time alone or with their small band just perfecting their craft, and so they're not typically outgoing. The lead singers tend to be the more dramatic, and because they're putting on a show and they're singing, they're
Right.
using their instrument, their voice, but they're also putting on a show where the rest of the band may be there just to be musicians.
Yeah, and that is absolutely true. Now I've met a few that are the total opposite of that, are some of the nicest people in the world. But introverts, and then of course you have your arrogance also.
Yeah.
And that comes with some lead singers too.
Yeah, of course. It's hard. Well, you get famous or well known, or you just have a lot of people that are fawning
Right.
over you. It's hard to not have a big ego.
One of the things that I found out, early on, and this was from from my family, you know, being around this, being younger, it was like, okay, hey, you can't be like a show up when you go in and meeting people. It's just you're courteous, hey, how you doing, and not be all over them for what they do.
Right.
It's about, hey, you're just another person, and that's what they are. And sometimes that's what they want to be treated as. They're another person just like you.
They want it more than non-famous people.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so that's how my approach was, just always, hey, how you doing? And everything.
And they appreciated that.
I would probably, the questions I would ask wouldn't be about what they're doing and stuff, about the music. It would be about just life. How you doing today? And everything. And,
Yeah, like you were
what
saying,
do you like to do on your time off?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. They probably love answering that.
Right.
Yeah. You had mentioned a house that you had bought, and it was in Worcester, right?
It was in Worcester, Massachusetts. And so it was unique. So I purchased this house. I started the process when I was 19 years old to purchase the house.
It's not what a lot of 19-year-olds are doing
Right.
in any generation.
Right. And so luckily so one of the things, I worked a lot. I started working at a very young age. My father owned construction companies. As I said, my sister and her husband owned this concession company. And I worked also through high school as an assistant to an engineer at a place called Buck Brothers. Used to be tools. You might have seen Buck Brothers tools in Home Depot and
Okay.
stuff like that, chisels and hand planes
Yeah.
and everything. So I worked there. So I always had a bunch of different jobs going. And so I was able to save a lot of money
Mm.
at a young age. I had probably a lot more than a lot of people my age. as far as renting an apartment, for one, a lot of people didn't want to rent to college guys,
Yeah.
and they could then. Fair housing wasn't really a thing. So they could say, no, why would I rent to a bunch of
Yeah.
young guys?
I'm going to discriminate against you because you're young.
That's right. And so as we rented one place, I said, this is ridiculous. I'm just paying for someone else's asset. And a lot of people don't think that way at that age, but I was. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to go try to buy my own place. So I found this place for $50,000. It was 5,600 square feet.
3 stories, 56
Three
square
stories, 5,600 square feet. Had 66 windows in it.
Holy cow.
So 3-deckers in Worcester. Worcester has most 3-deckers than any city in the United States.
Why is that?
It's just the way that they built it. This blue collar city. It was a way to put a lot of people in a smaller space.
You go vertical.
Yeah, go vertical. So you had this. So each floor. So I took the first floor. I bought $50,000. Only the first floor was lived in since the 60s. And 2 other floors were vacant. So 2 other floors barely had electricity. They still had gas lighting fixtures.
Holy cow.
They still had lead plumbing pipes and didn't have real toilets. The toilets were, they had this box in the attic that would collect the water for the flushing of the toilets and stuff. It was kind of crazy, but
That is
beautiful Victorian home. It was supposedly part of the Underground Railroad, so it had hidden rooms in it.
That's wild.
It was really cool. So I restored it from the ground up. So I got the apartment going first. I rented it out. At the time, I was for the second and third floor. I was / living with my parents / living with a girlfriend at the time, and kind of so fixing those up. Then I brought in some roommates, and I took the 2 floors for myself because I wanted to make the top 2 kind of making my bachelor pad.
Sure.
And so I did that and kind of made it. It was guy friendly, but at one point I ended up meeting some guys that needed a place. I went through some roommates, all different types of roommates. First, I had roommates that were friends, and that just they moved on, didn't work out. Then I had another part of the story is I had some friends that had a problem with drugs in the 90s, and every time they went into rehab, they'd come out. Their families wouldn't take them back in because they burnt those bridges. No one would take them back in except the drug dealers. So I saw the cycle. It was just going round and round.
Yeah, not good.
So my best friend was in that position. I said, you know what? You need to, why don't you come in and come in here and but this is it. I set some rules and, we got to go do a financial plan. You got to do some financial planning and everything. And so I had a few people come in like that, and that worked out, and they moved on, what we wanted. After they moved on, I had some space and some friends that I met that one was a recording engineer, one was in the recording industry and in a different aspect of it. And so they came in and moved in. And they were working at a national recording studio outside of Worcester. And they were, it was a lot of fun. So I got to kind of go to the recording studio and spend some time there. And then also they were able to, once in a while, the bandmates would want to get out. The bands would want to get away from that recording studio, and they would want to go to the city of Worcester to let off some steam or something. And sometimes they come back to the house and just kind of hang out and do their thing.
Yeah.
So at one point we took one of the rooms in the house and we brought in a soundboard. And so again, I wasn't part of this. I think I've mentioned I was not part of any the music creation or any of that. That is all the bands and everything, all the talent went into it. I am not talented musically. So they would come and just kind of write lyrics, come up with ideas, laugh.
And they're doing this in your place in
Joke
Worcester.
In Worcester. Yeah. So
It's pretty cool.
it was kind of fun.
All right, you have to mention who you ran into on the streets of Worcester.
So, a few times I've run into a few people. So actually last night I was just talking with my wife about one of them as we're watching this wonderful thing that's on Apple with Bono. You have to check it out.
Okay.
I was never really a big U2 fan when I was younger. As I got older, I became more and more appreciative of U2.
They're prolific and they've been around a really long time.
Really, yes. So back in 1987, so this is spring of 87, U2 was doing a concert. I think it might have been Joshua Tree that
Okay.
time. That might have
Yeah.
been that era. I think that's right around there. So I was, heck, 13 years old. So myself and some friends went to the city of Worcester from Sutton, Massachusetts, which is very rural. And so some country boys go to the city and we're hanging out, and we went there to some girls that we knew were going there, and their parents worked in the city. So we're just hanging out there for the day. Well, those girls were going to get U2 tickets. And so we're with those girls. At the time, me and the boys, because we were boys then, didn't appreciate U2, and we're saying, saying, I don't know, saying bad stuff about U2, like they U2 sucks and all this stuff. And we're outside of the place called the Centrum, which was the venue that they were going to be playing in. And I'm sitting there going, U2 sucks. And my friends are saying that. And all of a sudden, this guy comes out and says, why are you saying that about them? Do you know them? And everything. And all of a sudden, all these people started gathering around us. And we're like, no, no. He's like, well, why would you say that about, just really, really talking, very genuine. Why would you say that about someone you don't know and everything? And, it takes a lot for, and they're just really saying really nice things. And as boys, we knew what we're saying was wrong. And this was an older than us, telling us and just kind of in a very nice way talking to us. And we're like, uh-huh. And then after they left, it was Bono.
Who was probably in his mid-20s at that point.
Probably was. And
Yeah.
again, we had no idea who he was or anything, because we didn't have, at that point in my life, we didn't have this thing called MTV. We didn't have
You didn't?
I didn't have cable television at that point in my life.
Oh gosh.
So we weren't able to see these people unless.
Because cable hadn't made it out to Sutton?
That's right. Cable was not in Sutton, Massachusetts.
Wow, in Ashland, Virginia in 1979, because I think MTV came out in 79 or 80, Sunday Bloody Sunday, their first big hit,
Right.
hit hard for people my age. I'm a few years older than you. And when you say Joshua Tree, like that was massive for U2 fans.
Right.
So he was pretty darn well known by 87.
Right. So we didn't get until 1989. I didn't get cable television
Wow.
and start watching MTV.
Ashland, Virginia was 10 years ahead of Sutton,
Right.
Massachusetts.
Right. Well, it's the center of the universe.
Well, there you go. I can't say we got everything first, but yeah.
So, and another time we're hanging out. So, Main Street Worcester in the 90s was this strip. It was known because also in the 90s, which my family managed all the concessions for, there was a national car show in the 90s in Worcester, Massachusetts at Green Hill Park. It's called the Summer Nationals. And because of that, the Summer Nationals would go down, they close down Main Street, they'd have some drag racing, they do some what we call burnouts. There was a tunnel called the I forgot the name of the tunnel. I think it was called the Lincoln Tunnel. And so because of that Main Street Worcester, all summer long was called the Strip. And so people would go down there with nice cars and just drive up and down. And again, this is way back before internet was popular.
It was
people used to
get out.
Did. Yeah, it's what people actually used to get out and socialize before social media. And so one time we're just hanging down there with our cars and just hanging out, and Bush and the Toadies were doing a concert. And so this was about 10:30 at night, and some guys walk up to us and, hey, how you doing? Everything, just talking. We're shooting.
Are you still in high school at this point, or are you?
No, this is in the 90s. I'm out of college.
Okay.
So yeah. And I had my place in Worcester, and we're just talking and everything, and it was Gavin Rosdale, and we're just kind of hang out. We ended up hanging out for a couple hours. I ended up driving Gavin around and took him up to his place called what was the name of it? It's this tower that is in Worcester, and it looks like the front of a castle.
Mm.
And they used to use it for theater productions and things like that. Anyways, I took him up there and just showed him around a couple different places, but just got to hang out.
Yeah, and you were telling me he's a nice guy,
Oh
down to
yeah,
earth.
very down to earth. I mean, he just walked right up to us and just started chatting.
Yeah, that's the reputation he has
Yeah,
from afar, but you got to experience it first.
right. Yeah. So, again, I didn't recognize him right away, and some of the girls were that said, "Hey, are you such and such?" And but that was it. I mean, we didn't. Oh, hey, this. It was just about talking,
Yeah,
and about having a good time. And
they probably had a couple hits back then, I'm thinking.
they did. It was heck yeah. So when was that? That was 1994, 5.
Yeah, it was probably at the height of their fame,
Right.
or the beginning of it
Or the
anyway.
beginning of it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Fame then for musicians lasted a little bit longer too.
Yeah, yeah.
When they had a hit, because it's so much easier so just for recording production, how much that has changed over the years. Pro Tools was there in the 90s at recording studios, but some people didn't want to use the Pro Tools. They want to do it naturally,
Mm,
analog. And so as Pro Tools has grown more popular and it's easier to build a recording studio, you don't need these massive soundboards anymore
right.
and everything. So there's more and more music that come out, and it just doesn't last as long as it used to.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and because the internet's always on,
Yeah.
you're constantly being bombarded with new stuff.
And it's the good point about that, it allows others that have great talent to actually get it out there easily.
Yeah,
Whereas
Yeah,
you used to need, it was very expensive. And that's why it was important to have the labels to front the bills and everything like that. But every time that happens, you're giving up a piece.
yeah.
So
Gavin ended up. I'm saying Gavin. How did he pronounce his name?
I believe it was Gavin, yeah, something like
He's
that.
a Brit, so
Yeah, I mean,
and it's
put
his
the
name.
accent in it. Yeah,
It's his name. He ended up marrying somebody,
that's right.
but you ended up
So
interacting with her.
this was before. So I met him before they were married, and then shortly after that, I was at a nightclub in called the Palladium in Worcester, Massachusetts, and I had some friends that were bouncers there and everything. Again, it was one of those places people would line up to get in, and it's not because I am who I am. It's just it's who you know, and
Sure, yeah, I am.
I didn't have to stand in the line. I was able to get in. So one night, Gwen Stefani was coming through, and she came to the nightclub and she danced with a few people.
And she was famous.
She was famous there. She was still with why am I forgetting the name of the band?
I can't think of it either. We'll think of it in a
We'll
minute.
we'll remember.
Yeah, we will.
But she was still with the band at that point, and
No doubt.
no doubt. And but this was before the second album. So this was probably right before the second album that had the Spiderweb song on it.
So not uber famous, but
Right.
everybody knew who she was.
Everyone knew who she was, but she wasn't, yeah. And again, popularity took a little more time
Yeah,
at that point.
but you got to dance with Gwen Stefani.
So I got to dance with Gwen Stefani. And I
Nice.
used to like going to dance clubs and dancing. I've been able to dance on Club MTV and everything.
Really?
Just from jumping in and being in the right place at the right time.
Okay.
And everything. And not that I was a good dancer, but hey, whatever.
Yeah, it's
You know?
fun.
But it was fun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you wouldn't keep doing it unless you were having fun.
that's right. Exactly.
All right, so you're post college. You're mingling on the periphery, or maybe a little bit closer than the periphery, with some musical folks. What are you doing for a living? How are you making money in your 20s and 30s?
So my 20s and 30s. So of course I was working for the family businesses then. My father and my brother had a construction company. My sister and her husband had the concession company. So I would work part-time for both of those companies. But I was also, went to college to become an optician.
Mm.
And as I became an optician, as I grew through that career, I was working for a large multi-specialty practice. So it had 250 physicians, and they had an ophthalmology division, which had ophthalmology, optometry, and optical.
All right. Describe what those three are.
Yeah, so you have in eye care, you have three O's. You have ophthalmology, which are the surgeons,
Okay.
and in high level medical. Then you have optometrists. Optometrists, I'm going to use the word routine care, but I don't like the word routine because sometimes people think like routine dentist or something like that. But everyone should be keeping up with their eye care. So I'm going to make sure I plug
It's a
that.
good plug there. Yeah.
Once a year. Yeah, at least once. Well, once a year or at least once every 2 years.
Okay.
But it's very important, not just for vision, but for the health of your eyes.
Mm.
And your eyes are the window to your body.
Yeah.
But anyway, so optometrists do your routine care. So they're checking your vision, they're checking the health of your eye and everything. And so they could do some medical, and they could prescribe topically if you have a infection of your eye that you use a topical eye drops or something like that. They could do that. If you have glaucoma, which could be a medical condition, and your glaucoma is at the early stages, they can help prescribe medications to help with that too. So optometrists are right there, and then you have opticians. Opticians are becoming something of the past. You don't hear much about them anymore, just because it's just how the world evolves. But opticians, think of like the pharmacists. They're ones that design lenses and how they are fit on your face. So how your frames fit are important to your vision, and how the lenses are positioned in front of your eyes, and how those lenses are made for different focal lengths and things like that. So you have eyeglasses um, for distance, near, in between now is a big thing. Now we have so many treatments to help fatigue. So lenses that help with fatigue, because our eyes are using computers or handhelds now that our eyes aren't evolved to use.
Yeah.
I mean, our eyes are still evolving because of our technology.
Right.
And so opticians are the ones that kind of figure that all out.
And what was it about being an optician that had you gravitate to it?
Yeah. So when I was graduating, right, before I went to school, in school, in high school, you have the guidance counselor that does this little analysis on you to say, hey, what could be some good career paths? Well, when I did that analysis, it came out as a minister, a teacher, like a grammar school teacher or high school teacher or middle school teacher, or an optician.
Really? Those three?
So the optician part was because I was working as an assistant to an engineer through high school
Okay.
and in college. And so I really liked the technical stuff. I really enjoyed that. And I was also really into woodworking and working with my hands.
Okay.
And so that's what really brought that out. And so as I looked at all those, and at that point in my life, I wouldn't say I was super religious, but I was definitely religious. I have lost faith since then, but faith is a good thing. Don't get me wrong. So I looked at those and said, well, and my family looked at it and said, teachers don't make all that much, and ministers don't make all that much.
And they're both, I mean, I don't mean to be offensive when I describe those two endeavors, but they're fairly generic. They're not specific. You don't have to have, you need to be skillful in your own way, but they're sort of broad skills that a lot of people arguably may have. To do what you had to do as an optician, I imagine was much more specific.
Those came because I liked helping people. And I think that's where that came from, and through this analysis. And an optician not only helps people, but also works with the hands. There's a technical, very much technical side of it. And at that point, you could take that career, becoming an optician, and go so many different ways. You can get into precision optics. You can get into being an optician in eye care. Again, you're helping different things, doing different people, helping different people and doing different things. And so I decided to go, all my friends in high school were going to become architects, doctors, engineers. And my first 2 years of high school weren't the greatest 2 years of my life, so I went through some ups and downs there. But so my grades weren't getting me into those 4-year colleges, so the opticianry program looked really good to me. And actually, before I even went to the school and looked at the program, I didn't even really know what an optician was. And then when I went there and saw what it was, and at that point, opticians were still making lenses by hand. You could still make a lens by hand. And
Kind
I
of like a woodworker would
that's right.
back in the
This
30s.
that's right. This was before lens crafters and Pearl Vision were really big. So I went through that program I was going through that program place called Worcester Technical Institute. And then they had a program with Becker College. So that would give me my certificate and teach me all the technical things for becoming an optician. Then I went to Becker College, which is in Worcester, Massachusetts, and that's what gave me my associate's degree. Because I was doing both schools at the same time, the city of Worcester came to everyone that was doing that and said, "Hey, we'll give you some free courses at Worcester State College
Mm.
if you want to take them." I said, "Well, free college, why not?"
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
And so I grabbed those. So at the time, at one point, I was going to college. I would get up at and go to college. Classes would start 8 o'clock in the morning. I'd go through one school to 4 o'clock in the afternoon,
Mm.
class after class. And then I'd have some breaks in between. And then I'd go to night courses at Becker College until about 10 o'clock at night.
Gosh,
And
it's a
so
long day.
it was a long day. But, for a guy that's 20 years old going through that,
Yeah,
not a big deal.
20-year-olds are pretty resilient.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I did that, worked on the weekends, and sometimes I was taking courses on Saturdays. And I got through almost 4 years of college. I was 3 credits shy,
One class.
one class shy to get my bachelor's degree. And yeah, and I did that in 2 years.
Did you eventually got your bachelor's?
I did not.
Really?
I did not. I went right to so after I graduated college, I was just working so much, and don't forget I had a house.
Yeah.
And I had the house, I was working a lot. I was just really banking my money.
But it was just one class.
I had investments and the smell of perfume, the gasoline, the taste of beer and gasoline in the car. At that point, I was like, I'm just ready to live my life.
But you got into optical work, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, right away. When I first graduated college, I said, you know what? That's right when the tipping point happened that lens crafters and Pearl Vision, all that became huge. And there was more of those chain opticals popping up.
They were everywhere.
They were everywhere in all different names. And so at that point, being an optician, really, after I graduated college, it was like opticians were salespeople.
Mm.
That was it. And most of the jobs that you would get were about, okay, how much extra can you sell people? Can you get them from plastic? It used to be, well, get the ones out of glass lenses into plastic lenses. And that's the right move because glass was just so dangerous.
Yeah.
But then get them from plastic to what we call high index or polycarbonate. Polycarbonate being the safest. So that's a smart move too. But quality of the lens quality at that point was very different. So some people couldn't wear polycarbonate lenses just because of this thing called aberration. Their eyes just couldn't see through it.
Mm.
Just the quality wasn't good enough. And so what happened is I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to become a glorified salesperson.
You were a salesman masquerading as an optician.
So I went to work for the family businesses. I went to work for the place I was working in high school and college, Buck Brothers. I took a full-time position there, family businesses, and just kind of doing that. I thought I was going to do some engineering maybe at that point. But then I got a call from this company in Massachusetts that had an opticals in BJ's. So BJ's is a Massachusetts company.
Oh, is it really?
A lot of people don't
I had no
Yeah.
idea. Yeah.
So the first BJ's were in Massachusetts, Framingham and Westboro,
Okay.
Massachusetts, and so forth. So they had these opticals that were what BJ's didn't own it; they just subbed it out
Right.
and allowed someone to come in. So the company that was doing that called and said, "Hey, we need people," and they gave me an offer I couldn't refuse at a young age. I forgot what it was back in 1994, I think it was. The offer was probably 50,000, maybe a little
Yeah.
more.
It's a good chunk of change
And
back then.
at
Yeah.
that back then, that was for a 20-something-year-old guy.
Yeah.
And the work hours were you start at 11 a.m. and you're done at 8. That's perfect because I don't start going out until 8, 9 o'clock at night anyway.
Right.
And by the way, I'm already dressed up. So I can just go right out. I could sleep in.
It's perfect.
It was perfect for that age. So I did that for a while. Then the known place to be the top place for opticians, where they only hired the most skilled and professional opticians, was a place called Fallon Clinic in Massachusetts. And it was a large 250 physician group practice. And they had every specialty, right from, general pediatrics, general doctors, everything. They had ownership in a hospital. They had a sister health plan called Fallon Community Health Plan. This was a giant. And they only hired the best skilled and everything. So as a joke, I said, what the heck? I'll put my name in. I sent in at that point, used to mail in your resumes.
Yeah.
So I mailed in my resume. And sure enough, one day I got the call and they brought me in for an interview. I went in for my first interview and went through that. And that was just with the director at the time. And then from that, they sent me on the second interview, which brought me in with a bunch of these older guys. I'm in my 20s. All these guys are in their upper 40s, 50s, and that was the opticians.
Mm.
They're skilled opticians that had a lot of experience. And those are guys I wanted to work with. And they brought me in this room. They sat me in this dark room. They turned all the lights down dim. They sat me in the middle and they all took, this is after closing hours, they all took chairs and sat around me. And they threw all these questions at me. Now, let me first back up. While I was waiting to go into the interview, I'm in the retail optical part of it, waiting for them. They say, we'll be with you in a minute. We're just getting everyone ready. And they close, there are no clients in there. And so I'm walking up to the mirror, checking my nose and making sure nothing's hanging out,
Sure.
nothing in my teeth and everything. As they take me back, I realized the mirror I was doing was a two-way mirror. And they were all sitting there watching me.
That's funny.
So they sat me down. So I was embarrassed I did that. So now I'm embarrassed. I'm sitting down and they're shooting all these questions at me. And they had some tough questions. And
And there were a lot of them.
yeah,
A lot of people.
there were a lot of them. Yeah, absolutely. And it was in the manager of that site was in his office. And he had like a stuffed, like he was a hunter. So he had like a stuffed bear sitting in the corner of his office and everything. So, I mean, these were, little, intimidation there, his kill.
Yeah, a little eclectic too.
Right. Yeah. So, I got through that. I walked out shaking my head saying, yeah, like they're going to accept me.
When did you learn it was a two-way mirror?
Right when I was walking in to sit in that room. So I looked and said, oh my gosh, I was a two-way mirror. So anyways, sure enough, they called me. I received the job. I got the job. I shortly after that, I mean, I was working for a few months. I got my own location. And then I got involved in acquiring locations. And I had some real estate background. I helped friends buy houses and stuff like that. And they ended up, yeah. So that just kind of grew. And then, some things happened and I ended up taking basically me and one other gentleman. So there was some changes in leadership at the time I was going through this. A rough part of my life happened. Through all this, I was there for years. I met my wife and we started a family and our youngest child, Alec, at the time, um, he was perfectly healthy and so forth. And he started having some problems, and it ended up he um, he had some things going on. We didn't know what was going on, so we had to make some appointments. And of course, working for the healthcare organization, all my healthcare was done within the organization.
Yeah, yeah.
So, which was fine. So we had to take him to some appointments, and his
How old was Alec at the time?
Alec was at the time 14 months old.
So baby.
So he was still a baby. So his brother Joseph, Joe, is who is now 25 and just had his first baby a couple weeks ago.
Congrats, granddad.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Granddad, I'm 5-time granddad now. But Joe at the time was 2 years old, and 2 or 3. Joe was 3. And so some of these appointments we had to bring Alec to because we're just trying to figure out some development was he was a little slow on some development. So we wanted to do a MRI and a CAT scan and things like that to see.
And you knew his development was arrested because you had an older child and you were surrounded by medical people.
That's right. And he just was not his muscle development wasn't where it should be and everything. And he was perfectly healthy otherwise, like never even a common cold. I mean, he was just in a glow and a happy child, very,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
happy. So we when I had to make those appointments, the director at that time, because they didn't want Joe to be part of going for an MRI, they wanted Alec to be relaxed and Joe be kind of hyper. He's 3 years old.
Yeah.
And so it's not really a place for Joe to bring. So, can one of you stay home with Joe and one of you bring Alec and everything like that? So when we're making these appointments, my director at the time said, no, you can't take the time off.
Mm.
You could pick one or tell them they have to get you in the morning before you come to work so you can. And it was like, well, 7 o'clock in the morning is hard to get a 3-year-old there, and he just wasn't understanding of that. This gentleman did not have children
Yeah, that's rough.
and everything. He was
Yeah.
in his mid-50s, never had children around that.
Zero appreciation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But again, I couldn't risk my job career. I needed that, so we elected to do the CAT scan, which would have been fine for Joe. And we brought him in for the CAT scan. They did give him a sedative for the CAT scan. We did that CAT scan. Um, Came home that night. Alec was off, and he had this twitch in one of his toes, his big toe, on his right side. Twitch, and he just wouldn't stop crying. I was up with him all night. Everything.
And you guys don't know what's
We
happening.
don't know what's going on. And then later on that day, so I went to work the next morning. My wife was home with them and everything, and that twitch didn't stop. Finally, I got home from work, and that twitch turned into the whole foot.
Mm.
To that evening, turned into his leg, to his whole side of the body, and it was a seizure.
Wow.
And so we just brought him to the hospital. And
The toe was it was a mini seizure
yeah,
affecting his toe.
we called on that, and they said, oh, maybe it's just a reaction from the sedative and so forth. But then once it got to we took him to a different hospital, not the hospital that my company had ownership in. So we took him to UMass Hospital, University of Massachusetts Teaching Hospital. So we got him right there. They had a larger pediatric unit and everything. We got him right there, and they induced him into a coma.
Mm.
From that point, we spent months in PICU and tried to bring him out of the coma. Found out he had mitochondrial disease.
Mm.
That led to his organs starting to fail, and it just to a point where he was having liver failure, and he wasn't eligible for a liver transplant because of his disease.
Mm.
And so he was put on hospice care. We brought him home, and he passed away in November 2003.
You were holding him.
I was holding him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was nothing we could do. I mean, there was nothing we could do.
It was going to happen no matter what. Like there was nothing that would have prevented that
It was,
outcome.
yeah, there wasn't. Could have, if we had the MRI done, we had to choose one or the other. If we had the MRI done, could we have seen those brain waves being off? We could have caught it before the seizure happened. We can go back and say could have, would have, this and that. But Fallon Clinic was very supportive of me, of our family. And
As they should have been. Yeah.
the gentleman, the director at that point, they made sure before I returned to work, he was no longer there.
Yeah.
He was gone. There was new leadership that came in and um, changed my life.
Wow.
This new leader that came in, this gentleman, he led the pharmacy for Fallon Clinic, and right before when all this was happening, before when I was in the hospital and everything, this gentleman led Fallon Clinic to sell their pharmacy to CVS.
Mm.
Big deal.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and CVS was in a neighboring state of Rhode Island, and this was CVS was in growth mode, which is they're huge now.
Yeah, yeah.
So he led that whole there, and he let himself out of a job. So after he did that, they said, "Hey, why don't you come over to the eye services division? We need someone to lead that. Not just we let go of the director of the optical services and optometry, and why don't you come take care of that and also help out ophthalmology with business development and how we can get that going." So when I came back, I was a manager when I left. And when I came back, there was 3 managers, I was one of them. And when we came back, that gentleman, he was going through his training. He was redeveloping the whole entire department, eye care, the 3 O's, ophthalmology, optometry, opticians, 3 O's, eye care. And he wanted to bring it down from 3 managers to having two separate managers, and business manager for business development and so forth, and an operations manager.
Mm.
And so out of the three there, he already chose who wanted for the operations. And that gentleman became one of my greatest mentors. He's like a father to me. And the 2 other managers had to compete. And at this time, the first season of Trump's Apprentice was airing. And so there are all these things throughout Fallon Clinic, all these competitions that were apprentice-like competitions for different business concepts, right?
Okay.
And so he gave us some tasks to compete on.
It sounds fun and scary.
It was fun. It was fun and scary because I really have to compete for this.
Yeah.
So it really made me, I really have to, but he believed in me. And so I went through, we did this competition, and this manager that was there, he was a manager for 15 years before, while he was there. So he had long-term
Yeah,
there. He was my manager before I became a manager. And so I had to compete against him, and it worked. And they chose me.
yeah. Wow.
And in that competition was months long. So it wasn't just like a couple weeks here. It was months long. And
It's like a football season.
oh yeah,
Or a soccer
it
season.
really was.
Yeah.
And so it worked. And then from there, they gave me these projects. And all these projects that I never ever thought I'd be working on. I learned how, and they teamed me up with these financial gurus. This is a large, 5,000 employees, 250 physicians, all these multi-departments. They had an office building with 12 stories in Worcester.
Yeah.
I mean, for their administration. This was a huge company. And so I would go and sit with all these financial planners doing cost benefit. They taught me how to do cost benefit analysis. I couldn't have learned this stuff if I didn't have these opportunities. And so we brought in consultants. We just revamped. I did so many different things within the organization, especially within eye care, that just made a difference. And it was all because Fallon Clinic was originally owned and started by nuns.
Hmm.
And Dr. Fallon got the nuns to invest into it, the Catholic Church to invest into this, and grew this organization. So it was about compassionate care.
Yeah.
And so it was about making decisions that were they had to be financially profitable and make sense, but also they had to serve the patient. It had to be in the best interest of the patient, which is the way it always should be. And that's how I was taught healthcare administration
Hmm.
and the balance to both of them.
Yeah, it's not really like that in
It's
most hospital systems these
it's
days.
not. It's really not. And so some of these projects really made such an impact, and one of them I was given uh, there's a couple things that I made an impact, I hope, that impacted many people, but one of the things that I'll start off with the smaller one. um every state has their own Medicaid division. The states are the ones that actually deliver the Medicaid.
Yep.
It's funded by the federal government and the state, but the state rolls out and decides how it works per state. Well, in Massachusetts, it was called Mass Health. And one of the things, of course, being an eye care administration, when Medicaid patients would come through, especially children, and Medicaid provides their eyeglasses, well, we used to come out with a set of like 6 different eyeglasses for them to pick out. So here we have this 12-year-old, this teenager, picking out these ugly, ugly frames. Ugly frames in the 90s, because, by the way, the frames I'm talking about are popular now and they sell like crazy. But back in the 90s,
Not so much.
these frames, not so much. And so what was happening, the kids would have to pick something, and they'd have to get the lenses that had all the glare. So when they wear them, they have all these reflections happening and all this stuff. So what was happening to these kids? They weren't wearing their eyeglasses. And the number one thing, 80% of what a child learns is through the eyes. And so it's important for all students to wear eyeglasses. So if they need them, to wear their eyewear. So children weren't wearing their eyewear. So I looked at that. I was in a position I was able to look at it and go, this is absolutely terrible. So I wrote letters to congressmen, to senators, to the governor, and said, hey, listen, we can do better. I could help you find ways to buy more fashionable frames for these young people so they can wear them and not feel terrible about wearing their eyeglasses.
That's compassionate care. Yeah.
Yeah. And sure enough, a senator called up, came and visited me.
State or U.S.?
State.
Okay.
Came and visited me at Fallon Clinic. Came to my office, made an arrangement, came with their entourage and everything, and sat down, and I showed them everything. They said, we're making a change. And sure enough, they made the change.
Wow, that's cool. It's really cool.
So that was kind of cool. Another thing is they gave me this task. They said, hey, Mark, we want to look at, because at the time, I think we had 10 or 11 locations for optometry, ophthalmology, and optical. So they said, hey, Mark, we want you to look into building a optical laboratory to make our own eyewear. So make the lenses from scratch.
You had to be thrilled with that prospect, I'm guessing.
The answer was, thrilled with it? The answer was no.
Mm.
So this was kind of a funny thing. So because right when I became a manager, so this is before Alec passed away and so forth, when I became a manager, one of the things we did is they had an optical laboratory. We shut it down because we couldn't find people to work it.
Mm.
And the quality wasn't all that good. And it was less expensive because the wholesale laboratories, it was less expensive to buy everything from the wholesale laboratory that was down the street.
Why did your hospital want you to restart that lab?
To have better control of quality and to, say we're doing it ourselves.
Yeah.
and everything. Because once we liquidated that lab and went to the wholesale laboratories, well, gradually their prices went up.
Mm.
That's how that works.
Yeah.
So, we said, oh, myself and the operations manager, I was business manager at the time, said, well, we don't really want to do this because then we have to staff it. We have to find the right people to have the talent to run this and do this. And that talent isn't out there like it used to be. So to find the right people to make these lenses, it's not there. So we said, okay, well, let's price out the most expensive state-of-the-art equipment. Because my job was to do the cost benefit analysis.
Yeah, yeah.
So
You were sabotaging the plan.
I sent the operations manager, went out and sent him out to the conference and said, hey, price out the most expensive state-of-the-art equipment and come back. We'll run it and there's no way they'll go for it because it's going to be well over $1 million. And so he went and got the most state-of-the-art equipment, all these German manufacturers, because that's where the optics is Germany, at the time. And actually, a lot of the equipment still comes from Germany or
They're very detail
France.
oriented people.
Yes, yeah, the engineering and everything. So he priced it out, brought it back. I ran the numbers. I said, oh my gosh, this makes sense. This makes sense.
Wow.
It cost $1 million from the ground up to build this laboratory with the state-of-the-art lenses that would be these are lenses that are so new to the market, and we can make them, the optics are better in so many different ways. It's going to benefit the patients. It's going to be less expensive for the patients. And it's going to be less expensive for us. We're going to make more money off of it. We're going to have better quality. It's just a no-brainer to do this. And the equipment, it's made so it just need people that can push buttons, and they have to have some know-how. And we said, okay, the best ones to hire are people that have been through the military, that have been through some of the engineering programs that, through the military.
Right.
And so we presented it. I had to go present it to the capital committee that makes these decisions. And so I'm presenting against cardiology, because there's this pool of money that everyone's going for. And so I go up with this presentation, this and this. They said, you got it. A great presentation, so forth. And so we started working on this project. Now, whenever you do a cost benefit analysis, it has to show a profit, or at the worst case scenario, break even within 36 months. So when I did this, that definitely, I think it was 20 something months, it was going to be a profit. And so we put it together and built this, and it paid for itself in 18 months.
Wow.
To the point, all the big wholesale laboratories, which there was a couple at the time, now there's really only one, they came through and they came in to offer to buy it within 6 months of us running it.
That's
saying, we want to buy it from you. They were going to buy it. It has since been sold since I left that organization. And basically it was sold and shut down.
Mm.
And that's what that's what they wanted to do, is shut it down because they don't want more people doing it.
Right. They didn't want the competition. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's wild.
And so the difference of these lenses were like taking our old tube televisions that we used to have and taking the flat screens that we have now in televisions.
Yeah.
If you put those side by side, you could see the difference in watching those.
Well, yeah, and you have flat versus giant, heavy.
Yeah. And just the quality of the picture and so forth are so much difference. That's the difference in the lenses that we're making.
And how come nobody else was doing that?
Well, we were to start. They are now. That's what
I mean. Back then,
lenses. I mean,
back then.
So back then, because it was less expensive, because all the equipment was in place in the wholesale laboratories to do that. So change out all the equipment would be, they just take a loss on all that.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
It's a pain.
So I was starting it up. I was the first all digital lab. That's what it was called. Digital.
What year is this?
Digital surfacing. So this is 2000. 2006.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yep. And so they this digital surfacing, I was the first one to build an all digital surfacing lab in the United States for our own locations.
It's pretty cool.
And then there was one other person doing an all digital surfacing wholesale lab
Hmm.
in New York State at the same time. So we're doing them together. We compared notes, everything like that. So we got myself and my team got a name for ourselves for what we were doing.
Yeah.
And it was
You didn't see that coming.
no, and there was a lot of different things there. Like we were kind of carving the way and, pioneers because there are different lens types that come in and you have to have the know-how how to even tell the computer what to do.
Hmm. Yeah.
And, and then we're linking this stuff up with Japan because we're doing Seiko. Seiko had a big role in this. So there's a lot of different things there that you had to do. And just having the opportunity to do that was amazing.
Yeah.
And then turn around and say, here, patients, here's a better lens for less money. We're able to lower our pricing
That's awesome.
to our patient base
Yeah. It's
and
amazing.
still make more profit.
It's great. It's a win for everybody.
Win for everyone. And unfortunately, again, all that has gone away. Not only did that happen, but the big optical giants, eye care giants that are out there, that's a whole nother conversation we can have for another day. Those giants out there, they took this technology, what we pay for. I'll give you one example. Ray-Ban. Ray-Ban, when I started as an optician, I was selling Ray-Ban sunglasses for $36.
Okay.
They're owned by a company in the United States. And we're selling them. People are buying, not many people buying them in the 90s. They just weren't in it at that time. And then this company came and bought Ray-Ban, this company called Luxottica,
Mm-hmm.
bought Ray-Ban. They didn't change anything, how they're manufactured or anything like that. They just increased the price.
They made it a luxury brand
Because they increased the price, Americans started buying more of them.
because Americans are silly.
And so when the CEO was questioned of Luxottica and said, how can you justify that? And he said exactly what I just said. He said, we just raised the price. Americans bought more. So we raised the price some more. Americans bought even more of them.
Yeah.
And sure enough, that same thing I was selling for $36 is selling for $256 now.
Yeah. I had 20 plus years ago, I had a friend of mine got promoted at work. And I said, how did you celebrate your promotion? He goes, I bought myself some Ray-Bans. And he was treating them like they were gold because he paid more than $200 for them over 20 years ago. I'm like, my goodness, sunglasses for 200 and some dollars? Didn't make any
Right.
sense to me, but yeah.
So anyways, the same thing's happening with lenses, and it's unfortunate. It's something that I'm bothered by because I became an optician to help people, and being part of pioneering this new technology for lenses and everything. The whole point was we can make something better because the way I see it, if healthy eyes and people to see better is better for everyone. So it's better for our workforce. It enhances the quality of our workforce in so many different ways.
Yeah.
It's safer for our roads.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Children in school, if we can make it much more affordable and fashionable and they're wearing their glasses, they see better. Education, it's going
They're
to be
going to
better
learn
for
more.
education. They're learning more.
Yeah.
Even from a safety aspect, wearing safety glasses is protecting the eyes. That's why I got into eye care, because my eyesight was so bad as a child.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were able to get this and get the cost down substantially. But the big chains and everything take that and say, okay, hey, we'll sell you the old stuff for a little bit less
They have
expensive.
shareholders and the compassion leads the
That's it.
conversation.
It's capitalism.
Yeah.
And it's just the way it is.
All right. We're at a minute 14 mark, and I want to talk about your service animal who passed away recently, but can you talk about why you got the service animal and then what that service animal, the experiences you've had?
Sure, sure. So first, I have to say he's not a service. He wasn't a service animal.
Oh, he wasn't.
He was an emotional support animal.
Ah, okay. Thanks for the
So
clarification.
a lot of people get, and it's understandable. They get offended if you say service animal, because a service animal is a certain category
Oh, really?
that provides a service that is really needed, like a seeing eye dog
Ah,
or
gotcha.
seeing
It,
eye horse,
it's an actual service.
miniature
Okay.
horse.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's providing a real actual service that is a physical service.
Gotcha.
So that's the difference there. Emotional support animal, which is very important too, which we're able to, through our situation and everything, which turned out to be a wonderful thing in a way that helped a lot of people. So I have PTSD.
You lost a child. That's
I lost a child.
as traumatic as it gets.
And it's just the way it is. And I saw how it affected my family. And our daughter, she's doing wonderful now, so forth. 4 grandchildren. She's a great mom. Everything's great. When she was younger, she was 12, 13 when Alec passed away. And we saw how that affected her depression and everything. Of course,
It's a weird age for a girl too, and then she loses a son.
that and her parents are going through depression at our own way.
And you're not sure how to manage it.
We're grieving. We're all grieving separately. We're together as a family, but we're all grieving. And so her life at 12, very influential with the bad crowd or whatever it may be. Kids are kids, just the way it is.
Yeah, yeah.
And she got into different things that hindered her life and so forth. And we tried everything, the counseling, medication, antidepressants, different things like that. And one of the things she said to us, I just felt like I was a fog and all that I don't think those medications helped, and everything is just, and we get that, we're glad she told us that as she got older, and it was good that she was able to let us know. So when my son got to the age 12, 13, I started seeing those signs of being a teenager, the chemical change and so forth, but also a little bit of depression. He lost a brother too. And even though he was younger, he still carried that as through his life. And we wanted to do something different. And so our family, I reached out, I have friends that are doctors and different people, and said, hey, why don't you think about a dog for the family? And dogs are great for boys and teach responsibility and be great for you, Mark, too, and everything. So we researched the dogs and we researched hypoallergenic. My wife is very allergic to dogs. I'm allergic to dogs. But my wife was a little bit worse. We couldn't, even hypoallergenic dogs, the allergy is towards saliva. There's no real such thing as that. Because if you're allergic to dogs, you're allergic to the saliva, to the urine,
To everything.
the chemistry.
Yeah.
And so my research led us to pet pig. You can't be allergic to a pig unless you're allergic to people. Well, I said that then. I'm actually allergic to pork now, but
wow.
But anyways, because pigs are 0.2% difference in DNA than a human.
Which is wild to think about.
Right.
Yeah.
You think about that when you're eating bacon. So we went and researched the pet pigs. The 3 popular pet pigs are Juliana. Some people call them teacup pigs and stuff like that. That is the smallest breed. Then you have the Vietnamese potbelly, which is probably the most popular that people know of. And then you have Kunekune. And Kunekune is the largest.
They're big.
They're big. Tucker was 265.
Yeah.
And but it's how they hold their weight too. They're not as 265 is big, but he's only as big as an ottoman, and he was long.
Right.
So when we went to look at the pet pigs, we saw the Julianas, and Julian, just like small dogs are kind of sometimes yippy and nippy, the Julianas were kind of yippy and nippy. And we go to pick a Juliana pig up and they scream. A lot of pigs will scream if you pick them up because, pigs don't like to be picked up off the ground because that's how predators pick up pigs.
Right.
So they scream. So the Vietnamese potbelly, we learned, were very territorial and they can get kind of mean. And if they don't know someone and it's their territory, they can get aggressive. Well, as we're looking at this pet pig breeder, looking at all these pigs, all these Kunekune pigs, all these baby Kunekune pigs are running around with us. I bent down, picked one up. It didn't scream. And it was like, oh, hold me and everything. It happened to be Tucker. Tucker found us.
That's awesome.
So we found Tucker and we said, well, what about these? Well, these are going to get bigger and everything, but they're the most friendly and social breed of pig. They were almost extinct in the 1970s. There was only 50 of them left. 50,
Holy moly.
50 Kuni. They're from New Zealand. And they were raised by the Maori tribe, if I'm saying that right. Please, anyone can correct me. In New Zealand. And what happens when Western civilization went to New Zealand and started visiting and living there and stuff, well, they noticed all these pigs were coming up to them. They weren't running away like most pigs would run away. And they're coming up and saying hello. And we from Western civilization were going, oh, look at that, easy lunch, boom.
Yep.
And so because of that, we almost killed them off.
Mm.
Us Western civilization just always thinking with our stomach.
And human, yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, we there was only 50 of them left, and when we got Tucker, he was still on the endangered list, that his species. And so his breed. So we brought him home. We brought him home at 4 weeks old. My wife housebroke him in 3 days. He was 5 pounds.
So they're smart.
They're smart. And so, we did the whole thing like with dogs. We have pee pads, and she did it with apples. And okay, if, you got to go pee, and she'd bring him outside, go pee. He'd go pee. And here's an apple. And so every time he had to go pee, go find her, and I need to go outside because I want my apple.
Yeah.
And it just really, when I say apple, it's just a piece of apple.
Right.
And so he just became this really great, great pet. And let me tell you, it did everything that I thought it could do for our family. I'd come home from work and my oldest son, Joe, who's 12, 13 at the time, I'd come home. I remember coming home from work and there he is sitting on the couch with Tucker, and Tucker sprawled on him, and Joe just has this smile on his face. This is a smile that I haven't seen in months.
That's great.
And it's doing it's teaching him a little responsibility, everything. And then we found out that so many people wanted to meet Tucker that, hey, can you bring him here? Can you bring him here? And everything. We're getting out into the community.
Because people have never seen that kind of pig before.
That's right. He was so well trained.
Yeah.
He'd go up to the bus stop with the kids and everything. And then all of a sudden we're bringing them to nursing homes. We're bringing them wherever, parades and everything. It's just drawing people. Hey, can you bring him here? It was just wonderful. One day we ended up, this is a year and a half after we had him. And we ended up my wife got a knock on the door. It was a code enforcement official from Chesterfield County and asked my wife, do you have a Vietnamese potbelly pig? My wife said, no, we have a Kunekune pig. And they said, oh, well, you cannot have a pig in residential areas. And they basically said, you have a week to get rid of them.
This is in Chesterfield.
In Chesterfield.
Yeah.
And so at first we're like, oh, we said, okay, let's see. I reached out to Maymont, see if they could take them. They said no. We found someone that would take him, but they said he's never going to live in a house again. And we just all thought about it and we said, we can't do that to him. And then we read stories that when pet pigs are rehomed, sometimes they don't make it because it's like taking your child. Their mentality is of a toddler,
Mm.
a 3 to 4 year old toddler. So imagine taking your toddler and saying, okay, bye. We're giving you away to someone else.
Crushing.
Crush them. Just change their lives. They become different people. So it's the same thing with the pet pigs. And that's just how intelligent they are. And we just said, you know what? We entered this, we took this responsibility on. This law, while I understood it made sense in the 40s and 50s when it was written, it doesn't make sense now because we have more problems with the dogs in the neighborhood,
Yeah.
making a mess in our property, stuff like that, barking all night long and everything. No, let's not do this. And
You fought it.
so we fought it.
Yeah.
So Chesterfield County, we reached out to Chesterfield County, we got some advice. I actually thought it was a neighbor down the way that turned us in. And when I went and approached him and thought it was him that turned us in, no, another neighbor told him that we thought it was him that turned us in. He actually came and he said, I just want you to know it wasn't me that turned you in. And he was an attorney. He goes, you could fight it. You don't have to. You just need to say you're not doing it right now. They need to give you more time. And so I ended up reaching out to the county and saying, hey, this is not right. And the Chesterfield County was great to work with. So it became a huge news story in the news. And there was a lot of things behind the scene that people don't know. But Chesterfield County was great to work with. The subdivision that we lived in, the HOA planned community, was Brandermill.
Mm.
And 80% of Brandermill was for us and supportive of us.
I'm surprised it wasn't higher.
And one of the things that I learned from being in healthcare administration was, whenever something goes wrong, you're always the best one. It's always better if something happens within the practice. Things happen, just always does. Sometimes it's better for you to reach out, depending on the circumstance. As long as it's not personal in nature, not going to give up patient care information or anything with patient information. It's better for you to reach out to the news. If you know it's going to get to the news, people,
Yeah.
it's better for you to reach out. You're never going to have control of the story, but at least you're going to have a little more say in the story than if they find out from someone else and then come to you.
Right.
So
Looks like you're hiding something.
exactly. So I reached out. I found a news person I was connected with on LinkedIn. And I reached out to Kelly Avellino, who's now in Nashville, Tennessee, but she was in Richmond for many, many years with NBC 12. So I reached out to Kelly, and because I knew she loved the animals and everything. So I said, hey, Kelly, this is my situation. What do you think? And she said, can I come meet you? And so she came with a cameraman. And we started. We started there. Then it led to Nate Eaton with Channel 5, and Nate has moved on since then. Funny story about Nate. He actually, because of his coverage of Tucker the Pig, he actually got more job offers and stuff. But great people. Of course, the CBS station reached out, got part of this too, and it just really they all came. They ran the story. It got picked up by their national and ended up on ABC's 2020 talk show The Doctor. CNN did some stuff. I mean, it was on, of course, other news stations throughout the United States and different local stations, all the newspapers. And it was just, they really compared it to, in 2014, the Tucker the Pig story was the fourth most popular human interest story in the Richmond area. And it impacted so many people. We found out afterwards that there are debate clubs in schools having debates on it, including University of Richmond had debates on it.
Wow.
Some of the law school was using it for some of their studies and everything.
Yeah.
Famous artists, all the children that did their renditions of drawing Tucker the Pig was absolutely amazing. How it just affected so many people. And then these famous artists did it. There's one, George Whitman. He did this. He came and it took him 2 years to do this etching of Tucker. He etched into copper Tucker. They etch in the copper. I learned about this from him. They etch. It took him 2 years to do it. And he spent hours just hanging out with Tucker and our family. He and his partner had us over to their place. And
Where's the artwork now?
so it is being sold in art galleries. University of Richmond has a print. He gave us the first print of it.
So Tucker's a Richmond treasure.
He's in the history books.
Yeah.
This was George Whitman. This was the first one. He's done a lot of famous, very popular arts. This was the first one he ever named. And he even did some things. He put some butterflies in there because he knew how much my wife loves butterflies. So he put some butterflies in the picture. He put a fox in the picture in the background because at the time we're having a problem with foxes getting our chickens and everything. He was just a wonderful man, and he was an art professor at VCU and University of Richmond.
Okay.
His partner, I believe he was curator. He's now retired. He was curator for University of Richmond's art gallery.
Okay.
And so people would buy. We've had people that bought this print in art galleries in New York and would call us up and say, hey, we just bought this print. We just bought this art and everything. And then we learned about the story and we just wanted to connect with you.
It's awesome.
And so that was great. With this other, I can't forget her last name, but she did this rendition of Tucker, Babe, and the pig from Charlotte's Web. Wilbur?
Wilbur, yes.
Wilbur from Charlotte's Web. And an article ran in Richmond Magazine and had the three of them just hanging out on the wall. and all about lessons. Everyone could learn a lesson from what was going on with Tucker in this community, because all of our hearings for the Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission and everything were aired on national television.
Wow.
And so, on ABC's 2020 and different things like that. And even some of the supervisors would, one of the supervisors, when they unanimously voted that we can keep Tucker, basically said we could learn a lot from this, and everything. So we touched a lot of people in that way, just in Richmond, but our reach went out throughout so many different ways. Another important way is it brought the importance of what emotional support animals can do. It's not just for someone thinks someone needs it because someone is so maybe clinically bad that they can't get out of the house and everything like that. This is something we decided to do instead of medication.
Yeah.
So we did this in with both that, and also it helped us get out into the community. Part of being an emotional support animal wasn't just for us, but we're able to take Tucker to nursing homes with our children too. So they're having that interaction, seeing these different parts of life and everything like that.
He was a catalyst for all kinds of things.
And he was touching those people. He'd go to a nursing home and we'd sit him in the middle and all the residents would have chairs on the outside. And he'd just sit there and each resident could get up one at a time and go, and he'd give them kisses and he'd let them hug on them. We go to, this is a great organization we used to do a lot with, Richmond Autistic Integration Network. And they had summer camps and everything. And every summer camp, when Tucker was with us, we'd bring Tucker. And he'd just go in there and the kids just loved them. And they would literally pig pile on the pig. And Tucker would just sit there and he'd love it. Kiss the pig contests. So elementary schools would invite us too. They do fundraisers, and they get to a certain goal. The principal had to kiss the pig. Principal and vice principal, assistant principal would have to kiss the pig. And so we would, they'd invite us to go. And so we would go there. And it's funny, one time we're at Swift Creek Elementary, the elementary school right near where this whole thing started. And we're no longer living in Brandon Mill. We moved since then. Tucker's sitting there and the curtains are closed. We have him up on stage and they're getting the kids in there and the kids are chanting pig and they're all, hear pig chants and all this stuff and Tucker the pig and all this stuff. And Tucker's just sitting there. And all of a sudden we open up the curtains. Tucker just stands up, walks to the edge and all the kids are just screaming and laughing. And all the kids, Tucker just walks up to the edge of the stage and just looks around at all the kids and he just smiles because he'd smile. He's just a happy pig.
They'll never forget that moment.
And it was just amazing. He just sat there, and then the principal came up and had to hug him and kiss him, and CEOs of hospitals, same thing. So that was that aspect of getting out in the community and touching people that way. The other way was we even had Tucker at it's called home housing opportunities made equal, and they're kind of like the watchdog and everything when it comes to the making sure the Fair Housing Act is abided by and different things like that, and that housing is really fair and equal for people that need it, and not just for buying but for renting and
Right.
all that.
Yep.
Everything fair housing encompasses. So emotional support animals was a thing there, and people were like, well, they're not therapy animals. I mean, they're not what do we call they're not service animals. So where do they fit? Now, do restaurants have to allow emotional support animals in? It's up to the restaurant. And so it's entirely up to them. And for going on airplanes, that was a big thing at the time this was happening. People were trying to big pigs and snakes on airplanes.
Snakes.
Oh yeah. Part of the story with the doctors show that we're on, it was the pig on the airplane, and people are all upset about having a pig on the airplane and everything.
Yeah.
And what they actually, when they were filming that, they wanted us to fly Tucker from Richmond to be on the show in California. And we said, no, we don't need him as emotional support that way. And we're not gonna put Tucker through that.
Yeah.
Never mind. So anyways, so because of that, they used Tucker in the fair housing brochure as a poster child for emotional support animals.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if it's done correctly, you have to have guidelines and so forth. So it has to be done correctly. So that was one of the things. The other thing is there are all these different townships and different localities, municipalities around the country that were facing the same problem with people having pet pigs. Most of the rules for no livestock in residential areas were written in the 1940s and 1950s for the right reasons. No one had pigs as pets back then.
It made sense back then. Yeah.
And the definition of livestock is an animal used for food, fiber, or utility. So technically, hunting dogs are livestock. Guard dogs are livestock because those are both utility.
Right.
So the federal government's definition is that municipalities' definitions haven't changed yet. And sometimes their definition would be a cow, a horse, things like that.
Right.
So they use Tucker's story in deciding different cases throughout. And we've helped many families keep their pet pigs.
It's awesome.
I just helped a family not too long ago in Wisconsin. And all they basically had to do was reference our case.
Yeah.
That one was easy.
That's precedent, right?
Yeah. In Chesterfield County this past October, every 10 years, Chesterfield County has a pig case that comes up. And this one came up. And of course, I was there in full support. Just a wonderful family. Their pig didn't count. Most of the time, a complaint against a pet pig for a code violation has nothing to do with the pet pig.
Yeah.
It's just a way for someone to get back at someone for something.
It's weird leverage. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what it was for us. Long story, another story, but we don't need to bring it up. It had to do with my a past employer, someone I let go at an employer. But anyways, so the reason the ordinances haven't been changed is because municipalities, and I'll use Chesterfield County. Chesterfield County is a huge county, and there's so much going on, growth and development wise. There's so many more precedent things than changing an ordinance to allow pet pigs.
Yeah.
And you can't just change that overnight. There's a process for that to go through, and that process takes resources from the county. Those resources have to be used for the other things. So the only way to get those ordinances is if they allow volunteer groups to actually work on that instead of using the resources, and if that's allowed. And so until that's done, we're always going to have these problems with pet pigs. But
I am so glad Tucker came in your life.
Yeah.
It sounds like he was, just a wonderfully positive introduction to your family.
and even a story that it came in and did that, and then what happened with the story, we got to remember, like I said, 80% of Brandon Mill supported us. That 20%, there's a lot of, Brandon Mill started in the 70s, and it was at one point the number one neighborhood in the United States. And Halsley had that score a few years ago in Chesterfield County. So Brandonville, being that top neighborhood in that heyday of Brandon, still has a lot of people of our greatest generation that live there. And that's one thing going through this whole process, we had to understand they have a hard time drawing that line.
Yeah.
And pig is food.
And that's it.
And that's it. They can't see that. And so we have to, there's a level of respect we have to give them for that.
Yeah.
And we just have to work that out, these things out with them.
Yeah, makes sense.
And just time, it will just take time.
Mark, you've lived quite an interesting life, man.
Yeah. I've been very fortunate. I've had wonderful mentors, worked with wonderful people. If it wasn't for the people I was around, I wouldn't be who I am.
Yeah, relationships are very, very important, and younger folks or even older folks, it's a good reminder that relationships matter and they can be pretty powerful.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Well, thanks for doing this, Mark. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd also really appreciate if you'd rate and review us. You can find us at scodupodcast.com.